Hello everyone, and welcome to the channel. So, this is it. The finale. The last one. The concluding playtest for Unreal 5. The last chance Offworld has to impress and convince us that this is ready. Because let's face it, that's exactly what this one is about. Unreal 5 is the gargantual bottleneck in the development cycle of Squad. So they want this out pronto so the game can move forwards again. Because 8.0 was released over a year ago now, and other than a couple of small patches with some basic filler content, we haven't had a single update since November. And trust me, the developers will be just as frustrated with that as we are. So what does this playtest finale bring us? I'll be honest with you, I don't actually know, as I can't find a single changelog or anything for this update other than the post that they put out saying that they've made improvements to picture-in-picture optics, which reads, "We have a new implementation for the PIP scopes." Why is the PIP rendering such a big challenge? Well, for high magnification optics like in Squad, we need to render two scenes for the different magnification levels. Rendering creates load on the CPU, which is issuing the render commands, and on the GPU. In the worst case, it cuts the frame rate in half. Our goal is to have the same frame rate in PIP mode as outside of PIP. For that, we need to address both bottlenecks. For the GPU, the most efficient way to gain performance is rendering less pixels. We can do that for the outside scene since there is a blur effect applied anyway. For the render thread, we have the benefit that we're always looking in the same direction with both views. This allows us to do optimizations similar to VR to reuse resources for both views. The biggest challenge with this is handling the transition of render states smoothly. We pre-allocate resources when kits are switched and are spreading some of the transitions over multiple frames to reduce hitching. But they then also go on to say, we are aware of some hitching whilst ADSing, so that doesn't exactly fill me with confidence. On top of this, that performance mode for optics, you know, the one where 85% of your screen is covered by a black overlay because optics are far too small because they're being held out at an arm's length, well, they can also be busted for people too and show nothing but a black screen inside of the optic. This really isn't shaping up very well for the final playtest, and we haven't even started yet. Now, I was always hopeful that the blur around PIP scopes would one day be removed, but if that's now being used to save performance, well, that's out of the question. I just hope that it doesn't affect being able to see things in your peripheral vision. And well, I suppose now the only sensible thing is to try this out for myself. And naturally, I jumped onto this as soon as I could and spent a good amount of time playing to get a really good feel for it. And look, I have to be honest here, initially, I was impressed. Performance felt smooth and solid. The game didn't look like ass, and general gameplay felt good. It certainly didn't feel like a step backwards, if anything, a step forwards. Iron-sighted weapons didn't look as blurry as they used to. Suppression was working like it does in Unreal 4 Squad, so they fixed that double suppression bug, and yeah, everything felt more fluid. The game still looks better aesthetically, with foliage not looking like a complete dumpster fire anymore, and all of the shadows and lighting, it just looks really good. But there's still no sign of dynamic weather though. Everything was feeling promising, but the more I got into it, the more I was starting to notice that the cracks that have been papered over, the zip ties holding things together, issues were starting to rear their regular and ugly faces once more. In-game comms are still completely busted, and now so more than ever, to a point where the radio filter only works half the time, so now it sounds like you're talking to someone in Discord for half the game. And if you're a player who likes to put your comms through specific ears, well, you can forget about that. Because it loves to phase from one ear to both ears to the other and then back again at complete random. It's absolutely atrocious. And after a short period of time, you have to make a choice. You either mute a bunch of squad leaders or you just completely switch off, because otherwise you haven't got a clue who is speaking to you. And on the topic of audio, I haven't encountered that bug where gunshots would come from rallies or radios yet, which is promising, But there's a few annoying things with audio right now, and the main one is, obviously apart from the communication problems, whenever a control point is captured or neutralized, the main game audio becomes really muffled and really quiet. I don't know if this is an intended feature or not, but it's certainly very, very frustrating, especially if you're a player that relies on audio cues. Vehicle physics still leave a lot to be desired. Yes, you can scale over obstacles much easier, but the fact that anything with wheels still has no braking power whatsoever after all this time is ludicrous. Vehicles seem to be tipping over far too easy as well compared to previous builds, and to be honest, vehicles do seem to handle much worse in a fully populated server than an empty one. Could explain why this bug has not been addressed so far, but I was hopeful this would have been sorted by now, as I've been harping on about this since the very first playtest. But it's either low priority or the devs still aren't aware of this problem. Some of the tanks supposedly have ridiculous screen shake, and the range is still off on optics. Now, I haven't been able to confirm that personally myself, as I haven't used any vehicles other than obviously the wheeled shite, but I've seen a lot of people complaining about them. And there's no smoke without fire. Picture-in-picture optics, however, seem to be progressing rather well. I haven't been getting anywhere near as bad a hitching whilst using them as I used to. Yeah, I still get small hitches, but nothing like previous playtests, and to be fair, a lot of them were more comparable to Unreal 4 performance. Genuinely, they felt pretty good to use. The black screen performance mode Band-Aid though, that seems to be worse, as I get really big hitches whilst using that, and as I mentioned before, sometimes the entire screen's black. Now, the only time that I did get really bad freezes whilst using pip weapons was if I was bleeding. That bleeding animation and weird screen effect was too much, and I was getting some serious freezes as a result. So that is something to watch out for. Server performance is slowly improving, although it seems this build is maybe not performing as well as it has been, with servers being pinned constantly and TPS taking a big hit at times, causing all kinds of desync and weird things to go on. And see, trying to hit a moving vehicle past 300 meters, you can forget about that due to how much it moves and lags around, and that can also be extended to infantry at range as well. But now we're getting into the part that has really put me off this build, and that is the sheer amount of bugs and the quality of this build. Yes, I know it's a playtest and there will be bugs. However, this is the final one, and we all know what Offworld's track record is like with fixing bugs. And it's not great. For something that is supposed to be the final playtest, I think it's fair to say that this is obviously supposed to be pretty close to the finished and polished article, but honestly, it just feels like another foundation block. As I mentioned before, vehicles still have no brakes, comms are busted, desync issues, inconsistent hit registration, and issues still persisting since the very first playtest, and even live squad. It's not good luck. Some of the newer ones I found this build, including vehicles glowing inside the new smoke, shuffling side to side that tiny bit whilst prone leads to your soldier doing some wild movements, meaning you can't shoot anything, reload bugs, the placing of command assets being absolutely scuffed and borderline unusable, roads on Mutar basically a foot higher than they should be, so you cannot drive or walk on them, wake simulation causing most people that have it enabled to crash. That's an important one to take note of, guys, because when this gets pushed live, if there's no mention of this being fixed in the patch notes, I guarantee disabling this will stop a lot of you from having crashes. So put a pin in that. If a commander goes into the UAV, when you come out, you're displaced from your own body. If you're prone out, you can see your own butthole. If you get downed and someone picks you up, unbeknown to you, your body just starts crawling away, meaning you can't be healed. I watched poor old Operator Drewski's soldier basically crawl into a wall, leading him to get stuck in the end after I'd revived him. And this is a hint of the old spaghetti code coming back in, because this was a problem in squad a very long time ago. There's also a field of view bug which keeps you stuck in a super zoomed in field of view, and I will bet money that is linked with that new zoom eyes feature, which I promptly disabled because it is so slow to use now, it's not even worth having on. Also, don't forget, your weapon handling is still affected by your FPS. Some roads can't have mines placed on them, and the new performance scope mode can sometimes, well, yeah, as I said before, you get a full black screen, and the list goes on and on and on and on. And this is what concerns me most about this build. Yes, they've got it into a stable place, and a good place for them to start improving things. But that's what worries me. That means it's a foundation block. This isn't anywhere near releasable, and this is starting to feel really rushed. Don't get me wrong, when this is all ironed out, Squad is going to be absolutely incredible. I've seen some of the content coming in future updates, and it is next level stuff. But if this comes out with even half of these bugs still present, it's going to piss everyone off, and as quick as people will flock back to this game, they will soon put it down again because the quality is simply just not there. It goes back to my video, Why Squad Sucks Right Now, where I called out the development team for constantly releasing half-cooked content and features, and then never going back to finish them off. This has got all of the characteristics to be the next half-baked item to add to that list, and this time they'll be giving their community salmonella. But I suppose in a positive spin, if the top of the list of issues right now is bugs, then for those of you worried about performance and having to shell out on new machines, I wouldn't worry quite so much, because yeah, performance it's better, it's you know, it's getting there. It's comparable to Unreal 4, dare I say. We just have to hope that between now and the release date, the developers have a huge drive at polishing this and killing off some of the bugs. And even when it's live, get those bug fixes out fast. Days, a week. If you start making us wait 2, 3, 4 weeks for bug fixes and hot fixes, you're just going to shoot yourself in the foot. Yes, Squad is the most immersive team-based FPS on the market, but don't be surprised if the community gets pissed off at you because you served them up an overhyped and undercooked turd. They'll get it right in due time, but if we're still here talking about these bugs 12 months later, I genuinely fear for the health of both the game and the community, because things are already very fragile as it is right now. I really want to end this video on a positive spin, but I'm going to be brutally honest here. It doesn't deserve it. Just gotta hope that when the patch notes come out, there's a bloody big bug fixing list.